Hello everybody, my name is Zen, and the open beta for Diablo 2 Resurrected is available to play right now. You could go play it right now. It doesn't matter if you have a PC or if you're playing on console. The open beta is available to everybody until the 23rd, so until Monday. So you get to play until Monday, so you better jump on your chance to try the game out now. And I do recommend doing so because it is a unique experience going back into the past and trying a game that is so influential to the games industry that many genres were changed by this game. And I think everybody should at least take a shot at going back and playing it, especially with the remastered graphics. It's actually pretty incredible. I'll go into more details about the remaster and how it functions in a moment, but I did just want to reiterate that this beta is available on Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and PC. So across the board, if you have one of those consoles or a PC, you could come and play it. So how does this remaster work? Because it is indeed a remaster and not a remake. And that's because Diablo 2 is a crotchety old bastard who is really annoying, and if you don't do it correctly, it's not going to feel right. And that's because Diablo 2, as it stood back in the day, ran on a grid, kind of like, you know, like a tactics RPG. And anytime you move, you're moving from one square to another. And because of that and the way that cycles work, which I'm not going to really dive into cycles, but just imagine spokes on a bike wheel, and anytime one of those spokes hits a certain point, that is when things trigger. And you could basically in the old game hit certain breakpoints, and that's what you were shooting for like attack speed and whatnot. And it wasn't necessarily dynamically scaling your attack speed, it was just putting it on a different cycle. And when you take a game that was on a fairly slow cycle, which is tied to the frame rate, and then suddenly want to make it look better and run at a high frame rate, it breaks the game. So this is what they've done. The old game, as it stands, Diablo 2, running on the most recent patch with some updates to it, because they have updated the game with a bunch of different quality of life stuff, is running in the background. And at any point, you can switch between the old game and the new game by pushing a certain button. So on computer, on PC, you hit G and it'll switch to the old game, and on console, if you hold left trigger and then hit either the select button or whatever the heck it's called on the Xbox, it's that one next to the menu button. It will switch graphical settings between the old game and the new game. And the reason this is significant is because it allows the game itself to feel and run just like Diablo 2 used to. People who are experienced with Diablo 2 and played a lot of it know the weird intricacies that happen because of the engine that it was running in, and those remain, except they have now put this giant facade on top of it, running in an incredible engine that makes the game run at high frame rate, so you can actually enjoy it at high frame rate. Though on console, it does certainly have some frame rate issues here and there. If you're playing on a next-gen console, it's significantly better. And even some PCs are having issues, but at least on PC you have some graphical setting options that you could change. So that's a little tip. If you're experiencing some frame rate lag, then just go and adjust those a little bit. But overall, the game can run in 4K at 60 frames per second, and it looks phenomenal. And like I said, at any point you could switch back to the old game because it is what is running underneath. It is the foundation of it, which keeps the look and the feel of Diablo 2 alive. So now that you know how the game works, let's talk about what content is available to actually play. So the game does come with the Lord of Destruction expansion pack. So you are going to be able to play all of the expansionary content when the game launches, but as far as the story content, the game currently in the open beta only goes to the end of Act 2, which is quite a bit of content. So if you play one character and you're just kind of lollygagging around, you're going to maybe get to the end of Act 2, and it'll be a lot of fun. If you know exactly what you're doing, you're going to be in the end of Act 2 in like a couple hours. It's going to be crazy. But the thing is, all of the classes are available to play except the Necromancer, which is a huge blow for people. Everybody loves the Necromancer in Diablo 2, and the Assassin, which sucks for me because I am an assassin player. I love the assassin, and it's just not been available in any of the tests, and it breaks my heart. But it's totally understandable that, they're still working on things all the way up until launch. So, those just aren't ready for them to play right now. But you can play like the Druid, for example, which is a part of the expansion. You could play Paladin, or you could play, I don't know, Amazon, Sorceress. What else? Barbarian. None of the other ones matter. It's the assassin that matters to me. But those are the ones that are available. Everything except the assassin and the necromancer. Multiplayer is also available in this beta. So if you want to jump on and play with other people, that's totally fine. If you want a PvP, that's totally fine. All of this stuff is available for you to go and try. And I do suggest finding some friends and playing, because it is quite fun to play through the game and then realize, how, especially if you've never played Diablo 2 or it's been a long time, to remember like, oh yeah, when it comes to loot, it's just dropping it on the ground and you're all kind of rushing to pick it up. And, but it's nice because like if you're playing by yourself and your friend is, let's say a sorcerer, and you're playing as a druid, and you get a really nice sorcerer item, you can hold on to that. And when they get online, you can trade it with them. And that is definitely a really cool feature out of Diablo 2. But let's give you some tips going into the beta in case you're looking to download it and you're waiting for it to download, and now you're like getting all excited to play. So tip number 1 is that you should bind your skills. And on console, this is much easier to do. You just kind of go to the window for this, and you can bind you could even bind general skills. And I talked about this in my console comparison video that I did between console and PC. But you can bind basically any skill on your bar, and the bar kind of looks like it does on PC for Diablo 3, where you have a handful of abilities on your bar, and you can even swap your bar to an alternative one by holding a trigger down. And it's actually quite nice because it gives you a lot of speed as far as switching to your abilities. On PC, you only have 2 slots. You have your left click and your right click, unlike on console where you have like a bunch of skill slots that you can use up. So for this, my suggestion is to go through and bind them. By default, you can bind them to the function keys, so like F1 through whatever. But you can redo those in the settings if you so choose. If you want to leave them on the F keys, that's fine. Once they're bound, you can scroll through them all on your scroll wheel. You can also bind things like your town portal, and I do suggest doing that because otherwise going into your inventory and clicking on the scroll or the scroll book every single time is really annoying. So having it just bound makes everything go a lot faster, especially because you're going to be going back to town a lot. Like a lot. Like every single time you pick up like 5 items, you're gonna be like, oh, I gotta go back to town because everything's full. It's a little annoying. On the topic of skills, this is important because Diablo 2 has a more antiquated design that has so far been wiped out of the games industry since then. I mean, it's been like 20 years. What do you expect? But when you put your points into your skills, it's pretty permanent. You only get a handful of resets, and this is in the game usually done by getting through the Den of Evil and then going and talking to Akara, and this gives it to you once per difficulty level. But when we're talking about the beta, you don't necessarily have all the difficulty levels available to you, so that's not really an option. Basically, consider it, you're going to have 1 skill reset. It'll reset all of your points, including your stat points. Then you can redistribute as you see fit. So if you're really not happy with your character, go do that. Otherwise, just kind of deal with it for a little bit. It's the way to do it. When the game actually comes out, I do suggest looking up builds to not just absolutely gimp yourself, or get really creative if you so choose and try to create your own build. Maybe even look up some items and recipes for later on in the game to be able to empower yourself and make yourself the best that you can be. But for this beta, go crazy if you really want to. Just know that if you want to reset your skills, it's not as easy as more recent games allow you to do. So just kind of keep that in mind. My second big tip is to try playing with a controller on PC. It's actually quite good, surprisingly. I prefer to play with a mouse and keyboard when it comes to the inventory management. It just makes more sense. It's way quicker. That's how the game was built. But when it comes to combat and being able to bind skills and stuff, playing with controller actually feels really good. In fact, if you have both a PC and a console, I suggest trying both. You know, there is cross progression, so the progression that you do on PC will carry over to console and vice versa. So you could play for a little bit on PC and then jump over to the console and kind of see how it works. Inventory management on the console is a bit of a nightmare, but outside of that, the gameplay itself feels really good on the controller. Next, you can make sure to go into the options and turn on item label display to toggle rather than to hold. So basically, by default, if you want to look at items on the ground, you have to hold the button to do so. It'll pop up the little nameplates. But they have added a really cool quality of life feature, including things like a clock and, you know, some other things that are really nice in the game. But you can go through now and change that to a toggle. So you hit the button once and then all the stuff is popped up on your screen. Especially helpful on the console where holding a button isn't really viable while you're going. I mean, you only have so many buttons to begin with. So like using a button just to see item names is kind of dumb. Here's another tip. On PC, you can zoom in with F. Yeah, you can hit the F button and it will zoom you into your character. In fact, here's another cool thing. If you're on PC and you hold F down, you can zoom in with the scroll wheel and set your new default zoom level. So that way, when you hit F to go back to default and then F again, when it zooms in, it'll set to whatever your default zoom is that you put it to with your scroll wheel. It's kind of a nice little feature, especially when you're switching back and forth between graphical options. You know, you hit G and you're like, oh man, this items that I thought looked really cool on these old graphics are making my eyes bleed. Let's go back to the new graphics. So you hit G and you know you're back on the new graphics. You're like, let's take a closer look, and you hit F and you zoom in and you're like, this is awesome. And then everybody on console cries because for whatever reason, zoom is not available on console. Yeah, that's right. If you're on Xbox or PlayStation, whether that be the new or old consoles, you just cannot zoom in. It's not an option, which is kind of disappointing. But keep that in mind. If you're running on console, you cannot zoom in. If you're running on PC, you can hit F and zoom in. You can even set your zoom level because PC Master Race and all of that jazz. Finally, this is the biggest tip of them all. If you die, and this is important if you've never played Diablo 2, which a lot of you have not, if you die, you have to run back to your corpse to get all your stuff, including gold and items, and it sucks. So just keep that in mind, that if you die, you have to corpse run, which is much different compared to like Diablo 3, where you die and then you wait a few seconds, inconvenienced and huffy puffy, and you're like, fine, I'll resurrect here, and you come back to life right at your feet, and then you're a ghost for a second, then you start fighting things again. Yeah, it's kind of a big difference, isn't it? It's way more punishing in Diablo 2 to die. Like, literally all of your stuff drops. And it's really bad if you were like, yeah, I'm just going to get to the end of this level. You know, I'm going to get to the end of generic cave level 4, fight whatever enemy is down here, open their loot chest and get a bunch of stuff, and then I'm going to log out for the night. And you get to them and you die. And not only do you die, but now you have to run back through the desert, all the way through generic cave levels 1, 2, 3, and then 4, get back to your body, get all your stuff, get everything equipped again, heal back up, go back into combat, and potentially die again if you're not prepared this time. It's bad, but just keep that in mind, that if you die, it is very punishing, and it may make you want to rage quit. With that in mind, now that you know that that's the case, you can be more prepared. With all of that said, I hope you guys have a great time playing the beta this weekend. I've enjoyed my time immensely with Diablo 2 Resurrected, and I'm really looking forward to the game launching. If you guys are going to be playing either the beta or at launch, let me know what class you're going to play as. For me, I really want to play my assassin at launch, but I guess I'm just going to have to deal with the druid and paladin for now, and maybe I'll do a necromancer post-launch after I've built up my assassin all the way. We'll see. But with all that being said, thank you guys for watching, and we shall see you guys next time.